Welcome, fearless minds. Have you ever noticed how the world judges people by the expression on their face, but never dares to look into their eyes? Your face may carry kindness, patience, and mercy, inviting others to believe you're harmless. But your eyes tell a different story. They reveal every battle you survived, every betrayal you silently endured, and every lesson carved into your soul. Mercy is your choice, not your weakness. Behind your calm presence lives a mind that refuses manipulation and a spirit that cannot be broken. Today, you'll discover why the quietest gaze often holds the greatest power. Most people spend their entire lives confusing kindness with weakness because they have never encountered someone who possesses both compassion and strength at the same time. They assume that a gentle expression means a fragile spirit, that a calm voice belongs to someone who can be controlled, and that patience is simply another word for fear. They have trained themselves to believe that the loudest person in the room is always the strongest, while the quiet one is merely waiting to be defeated. That illusion becomes their greatest mistake. They fail to understand that real strength does not need to advertise itself. It does not seek applause, and it certainly does not waste energy proving its existence to people who have already made up their minds. Your face may carry warmth, understanding, and mercy because you refuse to let bitterness become your identity. You greet people with respect, even after life has given you countless reasons to become cold. You listen before you judge. You forgive when revenge would be easier. You choose self-control when anger begs to take over. None of these decisions are signs of weakness. They are evidence of discipline. Anyone can lose control. Anyone can lash out in frustration. Anyone can allow pain to transform them into the very thing they once feared. It takes far greater power to remain composed when every emotion inside you demands a different response. The strongest people are often misunderstood because their confidence is quiet. They don't interrupt conversations just to be noticed. They don't threaten others to establish authority. They don't chase validation through endless arguments. Their confidence is built on experience rather than attention. Every disappointment they survived became another layer of emotional armor. Every betrayal sharpened their judgment. Every setback forced them to discover abilities they never knew existed. While others searched for shortcuts, they were building endurance. While others depended on recognition, they learned to depend on character. This is why many people underestimate those who lead with mercy. They mistake generosity for surrender. They confuse patience with hesitation. They imagine that a peaceful person has no limits because they have never witnessed what happens when those limits are finally crossed. Mercy does not mean the absence of strength. It means strength under control. A person who cannot defend themselves is not merciful. They are simply powerless. But a person who possesses the ability to fight, yet consciously chooses wisdom over destruction, demonstrates a level of mastery that few will ever understand. Think about every moment when someone expected you to react with anger. They pushed your boundaries, questioned your worth, ignored your efforts, or attempted to provoke you into becoming someone you're not. They believed they could control your emotions because they assumed your kindness had no foundation. What they failed to recognize was that your silence was intentional. You weren't avoiding conflict because you were afraid. You were protecting your peace because you understood that not every battle deserves your attention. Every unnecessary argument steals time from your purpose, and every emotional reaction gives away a piece of your power. There comes a point, however, when mercy reaches its limit. Even the calmest ocean can become a storm when pushed beyond its boundaries. The difference is that disciplined people do not explode without reason. Their response is measured, calculated, and impossible to misunderstand. When they finally decide to act, they don't rely on emotion alone. They rely on clarity. They know exactly why they're taking a stand, and they do so without regret or hesitation. This is why their actions carry far more weight than empty threats ever could. People often fear visible power because they can recognize it immediately. They prepare themselves against loud voices, aggressive personalities, and obvious displays of confidence. What they rarely prepare for is hidden strength. Hidden strength walks quietly into every room, observes more than it speaks, learns more than it reveals, and remembers more than anyone realizes. It never rushes to impress because it understands that true influence grows through consistency rather than performance. Those who overlook it usually discover its presence only after it has already changed the outcome. Choosing mercy requires enormous courage because it demands that you remain in control of yourself before attempting to influence anyone else. It asks you to master your thoughts, discipline your emotions, and separate temporary feelings from permanent decisions. Every day presents opportunities to become resentful, impatient, or cruel. Every day offers excuses to abandon your values in exchange for immediate satisfaction. Yet, the person who continues choosing integrity despite those temptations becomes someone whose strength cannot be measured by appearances alone. Their character becomes their greatest weapon, and their restraint becomes the reason others eventually realize they were never standing in front of someone weak. They were standing in front of someone who simply refused to waste extraordinary power on ordinary conflicts. The eyes have always revealed what words desperately try to hide. A person can rehearse a smile, perfect a confident posture, and carefully choose every sentence they speak. But the eyes rarely cooperate with deception. They carry the weight of sleepless nights, silent victories, broken promises, impossible decisions, and battles that were fought without an audience. Long before anyone asks about your story, your eyes have already begun telling it. They don't seek sympathy or admiration. They simply reflect the truth that experience leaves behind. There is a certain depth that only hardship can create. It cannot be purchased, borrowed, or imitated. It is earned one difficult moment at a time. Every disappointment that forced you to start over, every betrayal that shattered your trust, and every lonely season where you questioned your own direction quietly reshaped the way you see the world. Those experiences changed more than your circumstances. They changed your perspective. They taught you that not everyone deserves unlimited access to your heart. Not every opportunity deserves your attention, and not every opinion deserves your reaction. People often wonder why your gaze feels different. They cannot explain it, but they sense something unusual. It isn't intimidation for the sake of fear. It is awareness. Your eyes have learned to notice details that others overlook. They recognize insincerity hidden behind compliments. They detect envy disguised as support. They understand that the loudest applause sometimes comes from people secretly hoping you fail. This awareness wasn't developed overnight. It was forged through repeated encounters with disappointment until your instincts became sharper than explanations. The remarkable thing about surviving difficult seasons is that they transform your vision before they transform your circumstances. Long before your life begins improving, your mindset begins changing. You stop chasing approval because you realize it constantly shifts with public opinion. You stop comparing your journey because comparison only distracts you from your own growth. You stop trying to convince everyone of your value because genuine worth never depends on unanimous agreement. Your eyes begin reflecting certainty instead of desperation, and that quiet certainty becomes impossible to ignore. Some individuals mistake this change for arrogance because they cannot distinguish confidence from pride. They remember the version of you that constantly explained, apologized, and sought acceptance. Now they encounter someone who listens more than they speaks, observes more than they reacts, and thinks carefully before revealing intentions. They assume you've become distant, when in reality you've become selective. Experience has taught you that peace is too valuable to place in the hands of careless people. Not everyone who enters your life deserves a permanent place within it. Every scar leaves behind a lesson, even when the wound is invisible. Physical injuries eventually heal, but emotional struggles often create wisdom that lasts a lifetime. The person who has endured betrayal becomes more discerning. The person who has experienced failure becomes more resilient. The person who has survived rejection becomes less dependent on external validation. These lessons accumulate quietly until they become visible in the way someone carries themselves. Their eyes no longer wander in search of permission. They remain steady because they have already survived losing what they once feared losing most. Many people spend years trying to appear powerful without ever becoming stronger inside. They master appearances while neglecting character. They perfect their image while ignoring discipline. Yet genuine strength cannot remain hidden forever. It naturally reveals itself through composure under pressure, wisdom during conflict, and calmness when everyone else is consumed by panic. The eyes become the mirror of that inner transformation. They communicate confidence without demanding attention. They express determination without speaking a single word. There will always be those who misread your silence. They will assume your restraint means uncertainty. They will believe your patience reflects hesitation. They will convince themselves that because you refuse unnecessary conflict, you must lack the courage to confront real challenges. Those assumptions usually disappear the moment circumstances demand action. When difficult situations arise, people discover that the quiet observer often possesses the clearest judgment. While everyone else reacts emotionally, you respond intentionally because your battles have already taught you the value of self-control. Your gaze carries memories that no conversation could fully explain. It remembers the moments when nobody believed in your potential. It remembers the nights spent rebuilding confidence after life attempted to take it away. It remembers choosing hope while surrounded by disappointment and choosing discipline when comfort seemed far more appealing. Every experience added another layer of understanding, another reason to remain calm, another reminder that temporary pain often prepares people for permanent growth. This is why your eyes seem different from those who have never been tested. They have witnessed both darkness and light. They have looked directly at fear without allowing it to dictate the future. They have watched dreams collapse and then found the courage to build new ones from the ground up. They no longer search for easy roads because they understand that difficult paths often produce the strongest character. What others notice isn't mystery or intimidation alone. They are seeing the reflection of every battle you refused to let define you, every lesson you refused to waste, and every challenge that quietly transformed your vision into something far stronger than appearances could ever reveal. Silence has always been one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. In a world where people compete to be the loudest, the fastest to respond, and the quickest to defend themselves, choosing silence appears unusual. Most assume that if you don't immediately argue, complain, or seek revenge, you must be afraid. They mistake your refusal to react for an inability to respond. They believe your calmness is evidence that you've already surrendered. What they fail to realize is that silence is often the language of someone who has mastered themselves. It is not the absence of power. It is power refusing to waste itself. Many people are controlled by their emotions without ever recognizing it. A single insult changes their mood. One rumor destroys their confidence. One criticism sends them into endless explanations. Their emotions become remote controls placed in the hands of strangers. Anyone who knows the right words can manipulate their actions, but a disciplined individual understands something different. The moment you allow someone else to dictate your emotional state, you have handed them authority over your life. Real freedom begins when your peace no longer depends on the behavior of others. This is why silence often frustrates those who seek control. They expect anger but receive patience. They expect panic but encounter composure. They expect endless explanations but are met with quiet confidence. Every attempt to provoke you becomes unsuccessful because you refuse to participate in games designed to drain your energy. They cannot understand why their tactics no longer work. They become louder because your calmness exposes their desperation. The more they push, the more your silence reminds them that they are fighting a battle you never agreed to enter. People who underestimate quiet individuals usually focus only on visible actions. They overlook observation. While others rush to speak, you are studying. While they reveal every plan, you are collecting information. While they become distracted by emotion, you remain focused on reality. Observation is a form of preparation that many ignore because it lacks immediate excitement. Yet history repeatedly shows that those who understand the situation before acting often achieve far greater results than those who simply react without thinking. There is enormous strength in resisting the urge to prove yourself. The world constantly encourages people to defend every accusation, answer every insult, and justify every decision. But wisdom teaches a different lesson. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Not every critic deserves a response. Sometimes people have already chosen what they wish to believe, and no amount of explanation will change their minds. Continuing to argue only gives unnecessary importance to voices that should never have influenced your direction in the first place. Your silence becomes especially powerful when others expect emotional chaos. They prepare themselves for conflict because that is what they understand. They assume everyone reacts impulsively just as they would. Instead, they encounter someone who pauses before speaking, thinks before acting, and evaluates before deciding. This patience unsettles them because it removes their advantage. Manipulation depends upon emotional reactions. When those reactions never arrive, manipulation loses its power. Many confuse restraint with weakness because they have never experienced true discipline. It is easy to shout when angry. It is easy to insult someone who has hurt you. It is easy to seek revenge when pride is wounded. Those actions require very little self-control. Remaining composed during disappointment, however, demands remarkable inner strength. It requires you to place long-term purpose above temporary satisfaction. It asks you to think beyond the present moment instead of allowing emotion to make permanent decisions on your behalf. Some of the greatest victories happen without applause because they occur within the mind. Every time you refuse to let bitterness consume you, you win. Every time you choose wisdom over impulse, you grow stronger. Every time you ignore unnecessary conflict and continue building your future, you reclaim another piece of your freedom. These victories are invisible to most people because they cannot be measured by noise or attention. Yet they shape your character far more deeply than public recognition ever could. Eventually, there comes a moment when those who underestimated your silence begin questioning their own assumptions. They expected someone easy to manipulate, but instead they encountered someone impossible to provoke. They believed your kindness meant weakness, only to discover it was discipline. They assumed your patience came from fear, only to realize it came from confidence. Your consistency slowly dismantles every false conclusion they created about you. Without raising your voice, you demonstrate a level of control they struggle to achieve themselves. The strongest people rarely waste energy announcing their strength because they understand that genuine power reveals itself through actions, not declarations. They don't need constant recognition because their confidence isn't built upon public approval. They allow results to speak where arguments cannot. Their silence is never empty. It is filled with observation, strategy, patience, and unwavering self-control. While others exhaust themselves chasing the final word, they continue moving forward, understanding that the greatest response to doubt has never been louder opinions, but undeniable progress that leaves no room for argument. There comes a moment in every person's journey when people stop seeing kindness as something they can exploit and begin recognizing it as something they should respect. Until that moment arrives, many will test your patience without hesitation. They will assume your calm nature gives them permission to cross boundaries. They will mistake your forgiveness for endless tolerance and your humility for a lack of confidence. Every time you choose peace instead of conflict, they convince themselves that you are incapable of standing your ground. They keep pushing, believing there is no consequence waiting beyond your silence. What they fail to understand is that true resolve is rarely visible until it is absolutely necessary. Most people reveal their character the instant they face pressure. Some become aggressive because fear disguises itself as confidence. Others become defensive because insecurity cannot survive criticism. A few simply give up because they have never developed the discipline required to endure discomfort. But there are individuals who become calmer as the pressure increases. Instead of allowing chaos to control them, they control themselves. They understand that emotional reactions often create bigger problems than the situation itself. This ability to remain composed is not natural talent. It is the result of countless moments where life demanded resilience instead of excuses. Your determination is often invisible because it doesn't seek attention. It grows quietly beneath every challenge you survive. Each disappointment strengthens your endurance. Each betrayal sharpens your judgment. Each failure teaches you something success never could. Over time, your resolve becomes deeply rooted, no longer dependent on praise or approval. You stop measuring your worth by the opinions of others because you've already proven your strength to yourself. That inner certainty creates a confidence that cannot be borrowed or taken away. People who underestimated you eventually begin noticing subtle changes. They see that criticism no longer distracts you. Their opinions no longer influence your decisions. Their attempts to provoke emotional reactions suddenly become ineffective. The methods that once seemed capable of controlling your behavior now accomplish nothing. This realization unsettles them because they built their expectations around an older version of you. They expected someone who would constantly explain, defend, and seek acceptance. Instead, they encounter someone who has become comfortable with being misunderstood while remaining completely focused on the path ahead. Real resolve is demonstrated through consistency rather than intensity. Anyone can appear determined for a few days when motivation is high. True discipline appears when enthusiasm disappears and the work still continues. It is choosing your purpose on ordinary days when nobody is watching. It is continuing forward after disappointment without allowing temporary setbacks to redefine your future. Quiet determination has a unique quality. It does not depend on emotional excitement. It depends on commitment. While motivation comes and goes, commitment remains because it is built upon values rather than feelings. There will always be people who mistake gentleness for permission. They believe respectful individuals can be manipulated because they rarely create unnecessary conflict. They test boundaries little by little, assuming patience has no limit. But every disciplined person understands the importance of protecting what matters. Kindness never requires accepting disrespect. Compassion never demands sacrificing self-respect. Mercy does not eliminate boundaries. It gives them purpose. The strongest people know exactly where forgiveness ends and accountability begins. When the moment finally arrives to defend your principles, your response carries extraordinary weight precisely because it is so rare. Those around you immediately recognize the difference between impulsive anger and purposeful action. They understand that you are not reacting out of wounded pride, but acting from deeply established conviction. Your calmness remains intact even while your resolve becomes unmistakable. There is no unnecessary drama, no desperate attempt to prove dominance, and no emotional chaos. There is only clarity. That clarity is what commands respect because it reveals confidence that has already been tested long before this particular moment. People often spend years pretending to be fearless while secretly depending on the approval of everyone around them. They speak loudly because silence makes them uncomfortable. They seek attention because they fear being overlooked. They project certainty because they are terrified of appearing uncertain. But authentic confidence requires none of these performances. It exists quietly beneath the surface, independent of public recognition. It allows you to walk away from pointless arguments without feeling defeated. It allows you to say no without guilt and yes without hesitation. It allows your decisions to reflect your principles rather than the expectations of others. The greatest transformation happens when your actions begin speaking more clearly than your words ever could. Those who once questioned your strength stop asking because they have witnessed it firsthand. They no longer judge you by your gentle expression or your measured voice. They remember the consistency you displayed under pressure, the discipline you maintained when others lost control, and the unwavering commitment you demonstrated when challenges became overwhelming. In that moment, they understand something they failed to recognize from the beginning. The kindness they once dismissed was never evidence of weakness. It was the visible expression of a person whose inner resolve had already become stronger than circumstances, criticism, fear, or the opinions of anyone standing in the way. Peace is one of the rarest forms of wealth because it cannot be purchased, borrowed, or forced into existence. It is built through discipline, protected by wisdom, and maintained by the choices you make every single day. Many people believe peace comes from avoiding problems, but the truth is far different. Real peace comes from knowing exactly who you are, what you stand for, and what you are no longer willing to tolerate. It is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of inner stability. Even when the world around you becomes unpredictable, there will always be people who attempt to disturb your peace because chaos gives them a sense of control. They thrive on emotional reactions, misunderstandings, and unnecessary drama. They know that if they can influence your emotions, they can influence your decisions. That is why they provoke, criticize, gossip, and manipulate. They hope you will abandon your self-control and enter a battle that benefits only them. The greatest mistake you can make is believing every invitation to conflict deserves your acceptance. Sometimes the strongest move is refusing to play a game designed to make everyone lose. Protecting your peace requires boundaries, and boundaries often make uncomfortable people even more uncomfortable. The moment you stop saying yes to everything, some will call you selfish. The moment you refuse to tolerate disrespect, others will accuse you of changing. The moment you choose distance over unnecessary conflict, they will invent stories to justify your absence. They are not reacting to your boundaries. They are reacting to the loss of access they once believed they had. People who benefited from your lack of limits will rarely celebrate the day you finally establish them. Many individuals confuse forgiveness with unlimited tolerance. They believe forgiving someone means allowing the same behavior to continue indefinitely. But forgiveness and wisdom must always walk together. Forgiveness frees your heart from bitterness, while wisdom protects your future from repeated harm. You can wish someone well without giving them another opportunity to damage your life. You can release resentment without reopening doors that experience has already proven should remain closed. This balance is not cruelty, it is maturity. It demonstrates that compassion does not require abandoning common sense. Your greatest source of power often comes from the ability to walk away. Walking away is difficult because pride constantly whispers that every insult deserves a response. Ego insists that every accusation must be challenged and every misunderstanding corrected. But experience teaches a different lesson. Not every battle deserves your energy. Some arguments have no intention of discovering truth. They exist only to consume your attention and distract you from your purpose. The strongest people recognize this early and refuse to sacrifice their future just to win temporary disagreements. Strength is often imagined as confrontation, but sometimes strength is restraint. It is remaining calm while others lose control. It is refusing to become the person your enemies expect you to become. It is maintaining your character when circumstances provide endless excuses to abandon it. Anyone can react emotionally. Very few can respond intentionally. The difference between reaction and response determines whether your emotions control your life or your values do. As your inner strength grows, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop chasing approval because you realize approval constantly changes with people's interests. You stop seeking revenge because success becomes a far more satisfying answer than anger. You stop fearing rejection because your confidence is no longer dependent on acceptance from everyone around you. This freedom transforms the way you carry yourself. You become calmer, more patient, and more focused. Your energy is no longer scattered across meaningless conflicts. Instead, it is invested in building a future that reflects your highest values. There will be moments when standing your ground becomes necessary. Protecting your peace does not mean allowing injustice to continue unchecked. There are times when silence encourages disrespect, and moments when speaking with courage becomes an act of self-respect. The key is understanding the difference between emotional impulse and purposeful action. One seeks victory over another person. The other seeks alignment with your principles. When your actions are guided by purpose instead of pride, they become far more effective and far more difficult to challenge. People eventually notice the difference. They see someone who remains kind without becoming naive, forgiving without becoming vulnerable to repeated manipulation, and confident without becoming arrogant. They begin to understand that your calmness is not passivity but discipline. Your patience is not weakness but preparation. Your compassion is not surrender but conscious choice. Every challenge you refuse to let define you has strengthened your character, and every boundary you established has protected the peace you worked so hard to create. The most powerful individuals are not those who dominate every room they enter. They are the ones who carry an unshakable sense of peace wherever they go. Their confidence does not depend on applause. Their happiness does not depend on perfect circumstances, and their strength does not depend on intimidating others. They have learned that true power is not measured by how many battles they fight, but by how wisely they choose them, how firmly they protect their values, and how consistently they refuse to let the darkness of others extinguish the light they have built within themselves. There is a rare kind of person whose presence creates confusion before it creates understanding. At first glance, they appear approachable, compassionate, and calm. Their face reflects patience rather than pride, and their words carry respect instead of arrogance. People naturally assume they have discovered someone easy to influence, someone who will always choose peace, no matter the cost. But then they look into the eyes. Suddenly the story changes. Those eyes carry a depth that cannot be explained by appearances alone. They reveal a spirit that has endured storms without surrendering, a mind that has learned from every betrayal, and a will that refuses to be broken by circumstances. The greatest strength is often hidden behind the greatest kindness. Anyone can appear intimidating by raising their voice, displaying anger, or demanding attention. Those forms of power are obvious because they rely on visibility. Hidden strength is different. It remains unnoticed until life demands its presence. It waits patiently beneath humility, revealing itself only when principles must be defended or injustice can no longer be ignored. This kind of power never seeks recognition because it understands that true confidence does not require constant proof. Many people spend years trying to understand why certain individuals command respect without asking for it. The answer has very little to do with appearance or status. It has everything to do with alignment. Their face communicates mercy because they have chosen compassion over bitterness. Their eyes communicate fire because they have survived experiences that destroyed weaker versions of themselves. These two qualities exist together without contradiction. Kindness did not erase their strength. Strength simply gave their kindness direction. Without inner power, mercy becomes vulnerability. Without mercy, strength becomes destruction. True mastery is found in balancing both. Life has a way of testing this balance repeatedly. There will always be moments when people attempt to exploit your generosity, mistake your silence for fear, or confuse your patience with permission. They will push boundaries because they believe calm people never fight back. They will underestimate your discipline because they judge only what is visible. But every challenge becomes another opportunity to demonstrate that self-control is not the absence of strength. It is strength that has learned exactly when and how to reveal itself. Your eyes become the silent record of every lesson life has taught you. They remember every disappointment that forced you to become wiser. They remember every promise that was broken, every opportunity that disappeared, and every season when you had nothing except faith in your own ability to continue. Those experiences change the way you look at the world. You no longer mistake appearances for character. You no longer believe every compliment or fear every criticism. Your vision has become sharper because hardship removed every illusion that comfort once allowed you to keep. This quiet fire within you does not burn with anger. It burns with purpose. Anger seeks destruction. Purpose seeks transformation. Anger reacts to the moment. Purpose prepares for the future. When your actions are driven by purpose, you stop wasting energy on proving yourself to people who have already decided to misunderstand you. Instead, you invest that energy into becoming someone whose results make arguments unnecessary. Every goal achieved, every obstacle overcome, and every promise kept becomes another confirmation that discipline always outlasts doubt. There is extraordinary freedom in reaching the point where you no longer need everyone to understand you. The world is filled with people who exhaust themselves chasing acceptance, explaining every decision and defending every choice. They allow public opinion to determine private confidence. But once you understand your values, your direction, and your purpose, you become less dependent on outside validation. You begin living according to principles instead of applause. This freedom changes the way you walk, speak, and respond to challenges. You become calmer because your identity is no longer controlled by changing opinions. People often fear what they cannot predict. A person who constantly reacts emotionally is easy to understand because their behavior follows familiar patterns. But someone who remains calm under pressure, chooses mercy over revenge, and acts only after careful thought becomes impossible to manipulate. Others cannot predict whether your silence is observation, preparation, or forgiveness. They cannot determine where your patience ends and your determination begins. That uncertainty naturally creates respect because disciplined people cannot be controlled through ordinary methods. The remarkable truth is that your greatest weapon has never been your ability to overpower others. It has always been your ability to master yourself. Self-mastery creates confidence that no criticism can erase. It creates resilience that no failure can permanently damage. It creates wisdom that no deception can easily fool. While others are constantly fighting external battles, you are winning the internal ones that shape every external outcome. This is why your face continues to reflect mercy, even after countless disappointments. It is also why your eyes continue to reveal unshakable resolve. One reminds the world that compassion is still possible. The other reminds anyone who looks closely that compassion should never be mistaken for weakness, because behind every calm expression stands a spirit forged through adversity, strengthened by discipline, guided by wisdom, and prepared to protect everything that truly matters whenever the moment demands it.